Hello, my name is John Ford, and welcome to my Proxmox Automated Environment Provisioning course series. In order to provide each environment that you'll be creating with internet access or with its own unique network, it's important to have some sort of firewall solution. For this, I chose to use pfSense because it's free and installation is relatively easy and configuration is relatively straightforward. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to create pfSense as a virtual machine within your Proxmox environment. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to grab the ISO required for pfSense from the official pfSense site, and then from there, we'll create a new pfSense virtual machine, and I'll show you what configuration options I would choose when I'm setting this up. In order to install pfSense as a virtual machine in Proxmox, I first have to download the necessary ISO file. In order to do so, I navigated to pfSense.org/download. From here, I can select my architecture, which in this case is AMD 64, and for my installer, I'll select DVD image or ISO installer. Then I'll select the mirror, which is closest to my current location. From here, I can click Download. However, this will download the ISO locally to my computer. Instead of doing that, I would prefer to download it directly to Proxmox. If we look at Proxmox and go to the server that we plan on adding pfSense to, in this case ECE 2224, I can click the arrow next to the server, click on Local, and I'll see an ISO images section that will allow me to directly download ISO images from a URL. However, the issue with this is it is expecting a file ending in .iso. If we go back to our pfSense download and I mouse over download, you can see in the lower left corner that this is actually going to download a gzip file or a gzipped ISO. This is an ISO image that has been compressed so that the download doesn't take as long. I'm going to right-click, copy link address, go back to my Proxmox instance, and select Download from URL. From there, I can enter this URL here. I'll simply paste it, and I'll click on Query URL. Again, as I mentioned previously, you'll notice that the actual file that it's downloading is a gzip rather than an ISO image. If I try to download it, I will get an error that says parameter verification failed, wrong file extension. To get around this, I'll just put a .iso at the end of the file name. However, we'll have to keep in mind that this file itself is not an ISO image. This file is a zipped ISO image. So we're still going to have to go in and unzip it. Now I can click Download. This may take some time to fully download. I have paused the video and waited until the download is complete. You'll know the download is complete by the message Task OK at the bottom. Also make note that in the log, it claims that the file itself was saved to /var/lib/vz/template/iso. Now we're going to have to go there on the server and extract this zipped file. If I click on the server and I click on shell, I can get a shell to the machine itself. From there, I'm going to navigate to var lib vz template and iso. If I list the files that are in this directory with ls, you'll notice that pfSense file that we just downloaded is right here. I'm going to rename the file so the extension is the proper extension of GZ, so that it doesn't have ISO at the end of it. To do that, I'll say MV, the name of the file. I just clicked tab to autocomplete. And then the name that I want to provide it, along with .iso.gz. Now if I list the directory contents again, you'll notice that it has been renamed to pfSense.iso.gz. I can then go ahead and unzip this zipped file by saying g unzip, and then the name of the file. Once this is completed, if I again list the files that are in this directory, you'll notice that now we just have pfSense.iso without that additional .gz file extension. Also, if I run the command file and provide this file name as a parameter, it will tell us what kind of file it is. And here it mentions that it is an ISO file. Now that we have the ISO file for pfSense downloaded, we can go ahead and use it to create a pfSense virtual machine. To create pfSense as a virtual machine within Proxmox, I'm going to right-click on the server on which I want to put this VM and click Create VM. From there, I'm going to select my preferred VM ID. Please note that lower VM IDs will show up higher than higher VM IDs. So for example, if I have multiple virtual machines and I want pfSense to show up on the top here, I will provide it with the lowest VM ID. In this case, I'm just going to make my VM ID 111. The VM ID is arbitrary, but it helps with organizing your virtual machines. I'm also going to name it pfSense, but again, the name can be whatever you want it to be. For example, I could have called this firewall instead. Then I'm going to click Next. From here, I'm going to select the ISO image that I have just downloaded, pfSense.iso, and I can leave the guest operating system as Linux, and select Next. From there, I'm going to stick with the default options. However, I will go ahead and enable QEMU agent. We will be installing QEMU on pfSense itself. This will help it better interact with Proxmox and also allow us to see more statistics about how it is doing in the summary page. If I did not check this box, the QEMU agent on Proxmox would be by default disabled. However, this could always be changed in the actual options for the virtual machine that we end up creating. To avoid having to change it later, I'm just going to go ahead and select this now and click Next. From there, I'm going to create a disk on which I can install pfSense. I think 32 gigabytes is a bit excessive for the disk. pfSense should run well with a disk size of 8 gigabytes, so I'm going to bump the disk size down to 8 gigabytes and select Next. Now, how many cores and how much memory you provide your pfSense virtual machine is entirely up to you. It depends largely on how many cores and how much memory your Proxmox has, and also what you plan on using this pfSense firewall for. Because I expect my pfSense firewall to be encountering heavy traffic, I will provide it with 4 cores. This might be generous, and in your case, it may make more sense to keep the cores and memory lower. And then if you notice that the virtual machine is struggling, you can always go ahead and change this setting later. But I'm just going to bump my cores up to 4. For the memory, I'm going to choose 8 gigabytes. To figure out how much 8 gigabytes is in megabytes, I will open a new tab and I will multiply 8 by 1024. 8 gigabytes is 8,192 megabytes. So I will enter 8192. We will talk about networking more thoroughly later, but for now, I will just leave this default and attach it to the default bridge that Proxmox provides. Click Next. Once all these settings look good to me, I can go ahead and click Finish. I am not going to select Start After Created because there are still some changes I would like to make to the virtual machine before I actually start it. I'm going to go ahead and select Finish. Once this is complete, it may take some time to appear, but once the virtual machine has been created, it will show up on the left underneath the server on which you created it. I can go ahead and click on it to see more details about it. Before we can start up and configure pfSense, we have to attach the required interfaces for pfSense so that it can both be provided with internet access and so that it can be managed. I created this diagram to help illustrate how we want to set this up. As you can see in the middle, I have this firewall icon which represents pfSense. pfSense is connected on one interface to the cloud or to the internet. This will provide pfSense and any internal networks with internet access. In addition, I have a LAN interface. This interface will be attached to my management machine. I'm going to use this management machine to make configuration changes to pfSense. I will also install the scripts on the management machine so that I can use it to additionally manage Proxmox and also to perhaps make changes to the other internal environments. In addition to this LAN interface that has my management machine on it, I'm going to create separate interfaces for each environment that I provision. The environment provisioning takes place automatically, as does the creation of each of these individual interfaces. However, for now, I will have to create this WAN interface and this LAN interface in pfSense. Again, the WAN interface will provide all of the internal machines as well as pfSense itself with internet access, and the LAN interface will help attach pfSense to the internal management machine. In order to create these interfaces in pfSense, first I have to set up the required Linux bridges in Proxmox. In order to do so, I will click on the server that I am configuring and click on Network. From here, I can see all the network devices and Linux bridges in Proxmox. You'll notice that I already have a Linux bridge that I set up previously that is providing this Proxmox instance with internet access. You can see the IP of my Proxmox instance, and you can also see the gateway it's using for internet access. If you remember, during creation of the pfSense virtual machine, I already assigned it this Linux bridge. This Linux bridge is going to be used to provide it with internet access, and so it will be used for the WAN interface. However, we still need to create an additional Linux bridge that will be assigned to the LAN interface. In order to do that, I'm going to click Create, and I'm going to click on Linux Bridge. I can name this bridge whatever I would like, however, I will leave it at its default of VMBR1. From there, I could simply click Create to finish creating this Linux bridge. However, I will make a couple of changes just for appearance purposes. To remind myself what network this bridge is running on, I'm just going to enter the network name here. I'll make this a local network of 192.168.1.0, and I will use a net mask of 24 insider notation. You can kind of choose whatever you would like for your network. However, keep in mind that it needs space for at least 2 virtual machines. It needs pfSense and also the management machine. I like to use 24 or Class C networks because that provides me with some leeway to additionally add other machines to my LAN if I should ever choose to do so. In addition, for my own knowledge, I will add LAN to the comment so that I know that this is the LAN for pfSense, and I will click on Create. After creating this Linux bridge, I have to apply these configuration changes by clicking Apply Configuration at the top and selecting OK. Once these changes have been made, you'll notice that my Linux bridge appears here and there's no warning message telling me to apply my configuration. I can now attach this Linux bridge as an interface to pfSense. The way I do that is by going to pfSense and clicking on the Hardware tab. This will allow me to see the network devices that are attached to pfSense. I'm going to click on Add to add a new network device and select Network Device. From there, I'm going to select VMBR1 as the bridge that I want to add. Then I'm going to click Add to actually add this bridge. Once I have completed this, you'll notice that I have 2 network devices. The one that was created for me when I was setting up this virtual machine, and the one I just recently added. These are going to have interface names and be accessible from within pfSense with net0 and net1. The net0 interface in pfSense will be connected to the VMBR0 Linux bridge in Proxmox. This is going to provide our pfSense with internet access. The net1 interface is connected to the VMBR1 bridge in Proxmox. Now, this bridge is going to allow us to communicate with our management machine. We're also going to have to add this bridge as a network device to the managed machine once we create that. Now that we have created the pfSense virtual machine and added the required network devices, we are ready to start configuring pfSense for use with the remote management scripts.